usage that a mom walking her child. I'm going,
Ready?
no way.
Right. Call meeting order.
Okay, welcome to the Queen Anne's County Commissioners meeting. This is a public meeting that is being aired live on our local cable television station, QACTV 7. These media broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public presentations. In addition to our live audience this evening, we are providing remote options for citizens to watch and participate in county commissioner meetings. Citizens may watch our meeting live on our Queen Anne's County website at www.qac.org/live or on our television channel, Atlantic Broadband Channel 7, and now in high definition channel 507. Citizens may also participate by joining the live Zoom meeting by going to www.qac.org/public comment, and citizens may also email comments to publiccomment@qac.org. Comments received will be read during the press and public comment period on this evening's agenda. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. Press and public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes per person. If you care to speak, please sign the sheet on the information table outside in the hallway. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the commissioners and the planning commissioners' review. We will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Chris Corcorino.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody could please remain standing for a moment for all victims from 9/11. Thank you.
We have a few quick housekeeping items for the county commissioners. First, I'd like to say that today's agenda for September 14th and the regular and closed session minutes from our August 24th meeting, along with the Roads Board and Sanitary Commission minutes from your August 10th meeting, have been submitted and circulated for review. Do we have any corrections and or additions? If not, can we have a motion to?
One desk item. So I will make a motion to add, it's an action item to amend the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept the minutes and the amended agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, commissioners. Okay, moving right along, we are here today for a joint county commissioner and planning commissioner work session. We want to thank the planning commissioners for having us here at their meeting room today to talk about the 2021 comprehensive plan update. And again, we're going to have our consultant with Wallace Montgomery, Lauren Good, and Ray Moravec. They'll be leading the presentation this evening along with staff. We have Director of Planning and Zoning, Amy Mordock. She's going to introduce our consultants and some other staff members here. We have our Public Works Director, Alan Quimby, and Facilities Planner, Stephen Cahoon. So they'll all be making some brief remarks about our comprehensive plan and how that's going to carry forward over the next several months. So turn it over to Amy.
Welcome to everyone, and I would like to start by thanking Stephanie Jones, who has been our expert project manager for the county, coordinating with Lauren and Ray with Wallace Montgomery and our whole Planning Commission, county commissioners, and our technical committee. I thank them for all of their hard work. We had a very long meeting yesterday that we were very happy to have, finally looking at the working drafts that have been available to the public over the many few months. We were able to finally really go through that document and get it in shape, because it will be conveyed in October to our Planning Commission at long last. So it's been a long road, and we have known that coming to this point has been an inevitability, asking these two commissions to come together for an overall update. But over the review of this comprehensive plan, as we knew it would, there are key issues that we have had to address. And among the most challenging that we knew was going to be ahead of us was the simple fact that, for as far as we know, for the first time in the state of Maryland, Queen Anne's County has the lucky fortune of being the first jurisdiction to reach its nutrient load cap established by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and Maryland Department of the Environment as it relates to the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, which is the total maximum daily load. We knew that addressing our growth area was going to be a challenge, and that is really the key issue that we're here to just lay before you this evening before we turn the presentation over to Lauren and Ray to give you an overall update. We wanted to explain clearly how we've arrived where we are. And it started in 1972 with the Clean Water Act, and that is when the TMDLs were established. TMDLs established pollutant loads in all of the watersheds nationwide, and established where our impaired watersheds are located nationwide and why they are impaired for nutrients and sediments. Usually it's sediment, nitrogen or phosphorus, basically. Over time, there have been a lot of programs that have addressed TMDLs, some of them regulatory, some of them suggestive. And in Maryland, there was a rather suggestive approach to a lot of watershed planning initiatives. Not having met some of those TMDL goals established in the 70s, the EPA imposed a Chesapeake Bay TMDL in 2010. That turned everything into a regulatory situation. In doing so, all jurisdictions in the state were assigned a nutrient cap. And that means that the amount of nutrient output that all of our sources can generate is quantified through the Bay model. We have point sources and non-point sources. So point sources are some stormwater conveyances. They are our wastewater treatment plants that are beholden to nutrient caps established by the Department of the Environment. There are non-point sources which address our agricultural sector, some more rural stormwater management practices, and septic systems, and air deposition is also included. So we have to grapple with all of these limitations in a regulatory manner. So we have a water resources element. We have an NPDES permit, which is directly connected to our wastewater, all of the wastewater treatment plants in the county, municipal and the county plant. We also have municipal growth elements that are applicable to all of our incorporated towns. All of these pieces are meant to address nutrient runoff, your nutrient loads, and curtailing those loads. So as I said, we've hit our load for the county's unincorporated growth area. And in doing so, it became extremely important in this comp plan update as we are looking at quantifying our growth area and considering applications for comprehensive rezoning, which happens during this process. So when applications came before us requesting to expand our growth areas, we had a serious matter before us to consider, and also to try to explain to everyone in a way that is unique, because no one has had to really do this yet. So we may have had a couple of hiccups along the way, and
Some pages.
and that's why trying to make that very clear is where we are tonight, so that both boards are aware of those limitations and why we have these limitations. So that's the basic construct of how these nutrient loads have impacted our comprehensive planning exercise. And I want to now ask Alan Quimby to explain those growth impacts in terms of our comprehensive plan strategies as they relate to sewer capacity, the water and sewer plan, and then I'll ask Steve Cahoon to also address our adequate public facilities which direct us in terms of how we're going to supply those resources, as well as roads and schools. Oh, and I'll get out of your way. Sit right here.
Thank you, Commissioners. I've had this discussion with the county commissioners before, and I had a discussion with the planning commission not too long ago. So there's really not too much more that I can update you on. But as Amy alluded to, when we got our permit, our discharge permit, we were allowed so many pounds of nitrogen and so many pounds of phosphorus a year at our design flow, which is now 3 million gallons. And that is their absolute limit at this point in time. We are on paper up against that limit, both in gallons and probably in nitrogen. Fortunately, our plant does a superior job of removing nitrogen. So we do have some short-term options, which would give us a little bit of capacity if the MDE agrees with it, which would allow us to re-rate the plant. I'm confident that we could get 10% more flow, or 300,000 gallons, and at almost no cost. So obviously that's a good thing. But if we don't protect where that 300,000 goes, it'll be gone in no time, and the next expansion could be hugely ugly. I couldn't even put a dollar figure on what it's going to cost to really, truly expand the plant. And it's not just money, you have to have nutrient credits in order to expand the plant. We were somewhat fortunate with the Southern Canal project in that every time you retire a septic system, you get a couple pounds of nitrogen credits. No phosphorus credits, but nitrogen credits. Well, we don't need phosphorus credits. So at some point in time, at the end of that Southern Canal project, and once those nutrient credits are folded into our NPDES permit, because until they're in the permit, they don't exist, we may be in a position to expand capacity of the plant beyond the re-rating. But again, it could be horribly expensive, and unless we have a market for it, I don't know what to tell you. It could be, well, put it in perspective, the town of Salisbury spent $10 million for 200,000 gallons just 5 years ago. So it could be $50 million, it could be $70 million. I just have no idea. So while there's a lot of developers want capacity, obviously at some point it gets so expensive that they don't want the capacity. It's just not affordable for them. And if you make that dive into going into debt, obviously once you're in debt, somebody has to pay it. And if it's not new development, it's going to have to be existing users. And we were up against that with the current plant. Up until recently, a few years ago, we have $1 million for 20-year debt service, and not that long ago, we weren't sure exactly where that $1 million was going to come from. So it's more than just gallons and pounds. There's a lot of dollar increments involved as well. So the short-term option would be to re-rate the plant. I think it's pretty much a slam dunk. Again, it costs next to nothing, so that'd be great. Buy us some time. We could probably have that in air permit in the 2023 cycle. The longer-term options get very complicated. There's a couple available, being we do have nutrient credits if the commissioners decide to use the nutrient credits on expanding the capacity of the plant. But again, they are horribly expensive.
So Alan, to qualify what you're saying now, so the nutrient credits, you're saying we would not get any of the nutrient credits until the Southern Canal project is complete?
We can get probably definitely phase one, because phase one is almost complete, essentially is complete, and maybe phase two with Tower Gardens in our 2023 permit. The phase three and phase four could not be happen until their 2028 permit.
So we're 7 years out, basically, before we would recognize, and actually it's longer than that, right, before we recognize all the nutrient credits that we could recognize. Correct. So the re-rating would not be, it would not be a full re-rating, or?
We can re-rate because their removal of nitrogen is so efficient. So we can, basically, I'm saying we could flow 10% more gallons through the plant and stay within our nitrogen limit of 36,000 pounds, just because the performance of the plant is that good. But beyond that, you have to have nutrient credits.
Okay.
So you have in front of you a short-term strategy, which is in essence the re-rating of the plant by 10%. And then there's a couple of options for the long-term strategy, all of which are horribly expensive. And the last item really that you need to consider is Amy has indicated, We now have 2 discharge permits, whereas before we just had the discharge permit for the sewer plant. We now have an MS4 permit, which controls runoff, rain runoff and what have you. And like the MPDS permit, it has the regulatory permit, or regulatory enforcement behind it. One of the components is we have to treat 200 acres of existing impervious area, and we don't even own that 200 acres. So I'm not sure mechanically or legally how you could go onto somebody else's property and build a stormwater pond or whatever, marsh or whatever, to treat this water. But there isn't a provision in the MS4 law that you could swap septic credits for this treatment. So if the commissioners were to decide to do that, that would consume some of the ski credits, approximately 500 of them. But again, that too, the cost of treating 200 acres of impervious area that we don't even own, assuming we could get the permission to do that, is probably in the $5 to $10 million range if we did not utilize the nutrient credits. No.
It's still pending.
The Court of Appeals decided to hear it.
Because in here it says that, that 200 acres is impervious area by 2025. Is the clock ticking, or is it?
The clock is ticking.
Who owns the 200 acres?
I don't know, whomever.
Is it just everywhere?
Yeah, like Fisherman's Inn, Mearsport Marina, or whatever they're called now, Jamal, I mean, you know.
And how would you treat it?
I don't know. You'd have to build a pond or a wetland or something to capture the water before it got into the tidal waters. But how would you treat it when you didn't even own the land? I don't have an answer for that.
It would be design build, correct?
I don't know how you would do it, because it's not your property. It's not your property. I'm not sure how that would even work.
Give permission to put a pond or whatever it is on their property,
Unless they said no.
and then you pay for it.
You would definitely pay for it, yeah. But more than likely, then you're probably taking away parking spaces, which they may not want you to take away, because it's going to be impervious
sure.
area.
I'm sure it's
And
gonna
then it
be
may
a
run afoul of zoning ordinance and everything else. I'm not sure how well thought that whole process was how you're going to go on somebody else's property to treat their impervious area.
Do we know if there's a program like that anywhere in existence?
I don't know what the larger MS4, I'm not really up on MS4 stuff. I mean, MS4 has been around, phase 1 has been around for a long time for large jurisdictions. We're in the phase 2 MS4 category and
And that's brand new?
come out.
Years ago.
Years ago, yeah. It's not new. The Phase 1 counties, the Western Shore counties have had permits now for probably 10 years. Cecil County was probably the first county on the Eastern Shore to get an MS permit for Phase 2. And then there were several others in this last round, Town of Easton, Queen Anne's County. So we're in that group now as well for the Phase 2 counties for MS4. The court case would potentially allow us to put stormwater facilities to treat impervious areas outside of our urbanized zone, which, as Alan mentioned, are going to be extremely difficult to get large enough properties or easements on existing properties to provide treatment. So that's kind of what we're fighting to do in court, so we could maybe do management outside of those more difficult zones. So that's remains to be seen whether we'll get that permission or not.
State-owned lands, like state highway?
That counts towards our impervious calculation overall. Now, a lot of the state highways, as you know, have, when they expanded those, they've added stormwater features for those. So if they have stormwater management, they already are technically treating those impervious areas. So the idea was the MS4 program was to provide stormwater management for development that never had stormwater management. So like pre-84 development in our more urbanized, if you want to call them urbanized. That's what the definition is. Urbanized areas, Graysonville,
Stevensville, basically, right?
Stevensville. Yeah.
And we're going to have a presentation for you in October to teach you everything you want to know about MS4. But the Phase 1 counties do have an advantage. They usually have extensive networks of storm drain systems. So they already collect it to some degree. So at least there's a concentrated area where you could possibly treat it, whereas we have next to no storm drain systems. Everything's sheet flows and
Challenges.
For sure. But everything moving forward has to have stormwater.
oh yeah. It's like, I don't know, it was the 84 was the date, it's more like 2003, but there was a date where even if you did stormwater, we started our stormwater ordinance in 84 by state mandate, but it wasn't good enough to meet MS4, so I don't know what the date is, like 2003 or something. So even if you had stormwater back in the 80s, it's not good enough to meet MS4.
The end goal is to control the stormwater runoff. So, and I know that they had talked about trading other areas up, but if the area that you have to deal with is the impervious area where your issue exists, I can't see how trading off somewhere really solves the problem that supposedly MS4 was trying to solve, because ultimately you got to take care of the areas that your problem exists in, not, you know, necessarily going to North County and building some big ponds up there just to make everybody feel good. I mean,
That
right.
sounds logical to me, yeah. I mean, you're trying to catch the sediments off the pavement, the oils off the pavement,
Right.
keep them from going into tidal water.
there's been nothing the feds or the state has reached out to say, you know, because let's face it, most of the majority of the roads through there and the traffic that's generated through there is on state and federal roads, not county roads. I mean, they haven't stepped up to the plate and said, you know, we realize we created a lot of this problem that we're now asking you to fix. None of that.
Well,
Don't hold your breath.
as I mentioned, all the state highway projects, typically the newer ones, they do provide stormwater management, you know, when they make those improvements and upgrades.
50's been there. and
He's
it's-
not, you're right. Yeah, there
And
are.
it doesn't have any of those.
Yeah.
What would have to constitute an improvement to 50 for them to enhance stormwater management there?
Well, they did, like, for example, if you, when you ride down on 404, when they did the dualization of 404, you notice they put some roadside ponds,
Catch ponds.
bio ponds adjacent to the roadway to allow that water
Mosquito
to
ponds,
collect.
exactly.
And they did a similar project out at 301, 304 interchange, where they have that big wetland area, you know, south of the truck stop there. So that's another example of a larger stormwater facility that they've done for highway improvement projects.
Just to add to that conversation, that when the watershed implementation plans were implemented, there were parts of the plans that the local jurisdictions over which they had no control, and state highway improvements were one of them. But state highway requirements to address stormwater were a part of every jurisdiction's WIP, and how they manage that we had no control over. But those runoff calculations are captured, and means that they are meant to address them are outlined in the Phase 2 WIP, Phase 3 WIP that the state manages. And just to transition for Alan and to pull it back to the comp plan, this whole conversation that is new and speculative in nature, that we did generate very specific comprehensive plan strategies that direct the county to look at these long-term and short-term options. And if Lauren could flip to the technical committee's recommendations, this PowerPoint presentation will be available on our QAC 2021, Plan QAC 2021 website, and it has been made available in the past, but these are recommendations that are drafted into our comprehensive plan that direct the county to start looking at these programs and these options in a short-term and a long-term manner that deal with capacity, that deal with runoff, because we don't have all of the answers right now, which is a part of our legal conundrum, not having the answers.
So it's my understanding, and unless it's changed in the last 6-8 months, we don't have a WIP goal to date from the state. We don't have, they've never set them. So we're running on a ghost field with no end zone in sight because they've never told us where we got to be. And I remember this conversation goes all the way back to when we approved ski, that it was going to be, the world was going to be our oyster because we were going to get all these WIP credits for ski, but yet here we are 4+ years later, and we have nothing to gauge a lot of what we're going to make decisions on here. If we don't know where the end zone is, I mean, we're just running blindly at it. So some of this stuff may not even be pertinent 3 years from now if they ever decide what those goals are, right? Is that still the case or what?
2025? Wasn't that the, that drop
That's-
dead date?
Right, to a goal we don't know. And here we are in 21, and we don't know the goal. So how do you plan for something that you don't know what you're trying to plan for?
Well, that might be true, but we're still,
I mean, we're doing it, don't get me wrong, I get it. But
SAI puts us ahead of everybody else.
I agree, Jim, and I agree. And the stuff we did over at or Chesapeake College, I agree. We've done a lot of stuff to that end, but it'd be nice to know where we are in terms of, getting there.
It's a good APFO transition, so.
I was going to ask Steve anyway, because that's his field of expertise.
Good evening. Thank you for having me
How
here.
do I start?
No, Amy asked me to be here to speak a little bit about APFO. APFO regulates and monitors the available capacity of water, public sewer, public roads, and public schools. And that's infrastructure that generally the county's responsible for.
Steve, why don't you, for people who are watching at home and don't know what the acronyms are,
Okay.
tell them what APFO stands for.
Thank you. It's Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. The county first adopted an interim ordinance about 20 years ago, and we've had an ordinance in place when major development comes into the development review process. They're required to test for capacity for water, sewer, schools, and roads. And the APFO also implies an obligation on the county to be able to provide that infrastructure for future development. But the APFO is also a tool that if a developer can meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance and meet the requirements to get approval, but infrastructure isn't adequate, the APFO allows the county to put that project on hold for a period of time. And that developer could provide mitigation or offer mitigation to overcome the lack of capacity in schools or roads. And that mitigation, if acceptable to the county, would allow the project and the developer to move through the process with a project. It also was put in place to allow for a temporary hold, but not an indefinite hold. Because if the developer chooses not to offer mitigation, they have the option of waiting for the county to provide the necessary infrastructure for the project. So where we find ourselves is with public water, there is adequate public water, and generally we have no limitations there. Public schools, we have a few school districts that are reaching capacity or are above 90% capacity, and we're watching those and monitoring those as projects build out over time. And every year we get new numbers from the Board of Ed and have to look at where schools are with capacity. And if we come up against a school district that is over capacity, the county has the ability to plan and budget for expansion of that school system by adding an addition and adding more seats. A developer can proffer mitigation to pay for some of that to provide seats for kids that their project would generate. So there's some remedies there. Roads, similar things. If we come up to an intersection that has a capacity problem, the county and the state highway and a developer can work on a mitigation plan to widen that intersection, add a lane, or add capacity to that intersection, and there's generally could be a remedy. For sewer, historically, sewer is something where when we first adopted the APFO, we had the ability to expand the plant by putting money. If we had enough money, we could put it towards and expand and build the plant. But the rules have changed. And so now we find ourselves in a situation where the permit issued by MDE is out of the commissioner's control. It's out of the county's control. It's really out of the ability to mitigate in certain ways. And it's the rules and the situation is different now than when we first adopted the APFO. So with allocating all the capacity for that the sewer treatment plant currently has, the APFO is going to start stopping projects coming through the system due to the lack of sewer capacity. I don't really see what a mitigation plan would be that a developer could proffer because it's a permit problem, not a bricks and mortar problem. And So the APFO could be in a position of putting a long-term stop to any project coming through due to the lack of sewer capacity, and that's really not what the APFO was set up to do. And that remedy of a permit expansion or additional capacity really is in MDE's control and not in the commissioner's control or the planning commission's control. And it's really not something we can just expand the plant by putting more money towards it, or a developer could put more money towards it and make it remedy the lack of capacity.
Does that roll back, like if it's something's S2 W2 at this point, would that freeze that S2 W2, or do you have to change that S rating at that point, Alan, to make it what it should be, say S7 or 8, depending on the mitigation?
The short answer is yes. What you don't want to do is make a promise that the county can't keep in the time horizon of the plan.
Now, the other side of that coin, though, is with what is left, or what could be left with a re-rating.
What to do with it.
What to do with it. And who gets to say where it goes. So
You do.
right, and there. So how there, something has to be built in a process. And I don't know. I mean, that's something we need to address.
In the context of the comprehensive plan, we need to frame our land use policies and procedures to fit our ability to deliver that same infrastructure to those properties in those growth areas effectively, because we have no plan to go beyond that capacity. So like Steve says, we run into that situation where you're effectively creating a moratorium with the APFO if you do not have a plan to provide capacity beyond that point. If you have more property in the growth area than you can effectively serve in a reasonable time period. So that kind of ties it together.
The technical committee put together some recommendations that are, some of them are on the screen, coming up with capacity management plans, coming up with priorities on how the allocation would be used if the plan is reallocated, limiting the size of residential development that could occur, because residential development consumes the largest amount of allocation. I think number 5.
And then we still have 2 problem areas that need to be addressed at some point in Marlin Farms and Dominion.
Reviewing zoning densities. There's a variety of strategies that the technical committee had thought about to put before the commissioners and the planning commission and put in the plan for consideration. And, as Alan mentioned, if you have a limited amount of allocation for an unknown period of time, it really is, how do we want to prioritize it as county and that the commissioners and the planning commission want to prioritize that limited amount of capacity that, for right now, or until we work through and figure out if there are any other solutions.
Has there been any contact by anybody in the county with MDE, I know we cornered them in Ocean City, but has anybody formally sent a letter saying, here's where we are, here's Queen Anne's County, unfortunately, once again, out front, in a problem we don't want, but we have, so, to get some back input from them, I think that, we're getting ready to drastically change growth areas, it sounds like. So, with that being said, do we wait 10 years, if they come along in 2 years and say, you know what, we're gonna give you 10% more TMDL? I mean, I don't know, is there a mechanism that would allow us to walk back from the edge?
You mean in the comp plan?
Right.
Right.
You can always change the comp plan. You can always revise it.
You can.
Right.
We've known, this history has shown us.
We've lost.
Well, yeah, in trying to open it in between cycles, and that's what I want to say, if something's in there, something can be put in there.
Trigger.
Right, Exactly, that allows us to go in there without setting the place on fire. That's all, just, Amy, go ahead.
So two,
It's gonna, whatever you do is gonna set things on fire.
oh,
Well, we like fire,
so to answer your first question, yes, we have reached out to a liaison with MDE who is going to meet with us and assist us to generate this dialogue, continue this dialogue, and get some clear direction. And
Need to give clear direction? Malapropism.
I have great faith in our liaison who will be helping us with that initiative. I think if there's an answer to be had, he'll help us to find it.
Well, there are ideas, let's say. There are, if you want to say strategies, ideas, but they have to be very carefully formulated from the feasibility all the way through the economics. So they're not easily solvable problems.
Well, you know, one of the questions that I asked recently is, we're a county of 50,000 people and we're up against the wall. You know, and I don't know, Todd, you told me, Cambridge, with the amount of allocation that they have. You know, I mean, they did some people got in a room together, and it's a lot smarter than me, that said, here's what everybody's allowed to have, and yet, you know, honestly, I can't see us growing, what, 2,700 people in the last 10 years is what the census came up with, and now we're against the wall. So, you know, I'd like to see some kind of explanation from MDE how we are against the wall, but nobody else is, and how much allocation other counties have, you know, with the TMDLs and what we have, so.
If you look at the census data, we did not grow, despite what people think, this county did not grow as fast as most counties
Correct.
in the last 10 years.
Yes. So, you know, I don't know, I just think that would help in a better understanding of the system, so.
No, but we did forward sell our allocation.
Allocation being held up, so, right, that's, I think other thing people understand is, there's allocation that's not being used, but it's sort of on hold right now.
Well, I think part of that is it was forward sold 10 and 15 years ago, not recently. It's been allocation that's been out there for a long, long time. So,
Right. That if you look, there is a enhanced version or shorter version of Schedule A, but there is roughly 2,600 units that are going to be developed that have allocation currently. So that's a lot of new units that is eligible for construction over the next 10 years, let's say.
Right. So, and again, you know, that's 2,600 units, you know, for over the next 10 years. So that's not, you know, the end of the world. I just think that, you know, again, I'd like to know what other counties are doing.
Oh, yeah.
Units, you know, they're running up with and where their allocation sits at. That's all. I'm just, you know, I mean, there's people who speculate that this is a great tool to use to control growth, you know, your capacity. So, you know, and I get that, so that's fine, but, you know, we're gonna call a pig, so that's all. I just wanna.
well, and to bring the conversation back to our growth areas, you're right. The county has hit its growth area, growth limitation in its growth area in our unincorporated areas. But it's even more vital that we continue to collaborate with municipalities who have capacity, and to ensure that all of the standards that have long been in place in our comprehensive plan are followed, which direct growth to where we have means and infrastructure. And just to get away somewhat from a more gloom and doom approach, this is what I see as we're in this 10-year planning cycle, but this isn't going to be the constant state of affairs moving forward. This is where we are right now. We definitely have to deal with this limitation, but as we coordinate with the state, as technologies change, as we run through some of the good direction that I think the strategies are giving us in terms of looking at options, it is a possibility to update our comprehensive plan when we have valid reasons to do so. We have a 5-year update and, of course, the 10-year update, but if there should be a significant substantive change in the interim, that is a process that is open to us. So,
Well, just for clarification for the public, the APFO, does that same model go for incorporated towns? Do they have an APFO? Did they follow the?
no. What they do have is a municipal growth element, though. And what they do have are areas mapped that we coordinate with our municipalities, and we're doing so right now, to look at they have short-term and long-term growth areas mapped, because there is an expectation when you're in an incorporated town and you're paying taxes and getting a wide range of services, there is an expectation in terms of a time frame in which a town can expect to unroll all of its services.
Well, I'm more specifically the schools.
Schools.
No, that's a separate issue. But in terms of their growth management, they do have growth areas that are designated in the same way that the county does, although theirs are more flexible in the way they can quantify them.
So we could grow exponentially within the towns, and the APFO, specifically, like Jim said, the school side, that overcrowding issue is now out of the county's control at that point then, right?
Well, no, not exponentially. They also have nutrient caps. They also have
But if they do just residential, say they just put all homes in, at that point, they're pushing the envelope on the APFO on the school side, right?
potentially.
They do pay impact fees.
I get it.
The impact fee is there to cover that, so that's,
Kids are in there
That's
for
that's
12
right.
years, so.
yeah.
This is our toughest issue. But I'd like to turn the workshop over, unless you have any more questions, to Lauren Good and Ray Moravec, who have been guiding us through all of the chapter updates and all of the issues that have come before us and all of the community comments that we've received that have brought us to this draft. But I don't want to cut off comments if you had any more.
Just wondering, maybe you can just get us the information. I know, I tried to find it in here, what the capacities were in the incorporated towns, what the sewer capacities were by comparison to, just to use it as a comparison. I just didn't see it anywhere. And I think it should be relevant to looking at the growth areas outside of the, or in the incorporated areas.
It is in the draft comp plan, it just
Okay.
wasn't in your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to thank you for having us before you tonight to give a project status update on the county's comprehensive plan. As mentioned, my name is Lauren Good, and I am the project manager for Wallace Montgomery. That's been working with the county for the past several months. With me is Ray Moravec, who is the vice president of our planning group and provides technical expertise and a variety of different other functions to us throughout this process. So we really wanted to start this discussion with just an overall status update, move into overviews of the various chapters and the key issues that came out of those, an overview of the public outreach that has gone on throughout this process, and then wrap it up with next steps and plan adoption before we move on to public comment related to this portion. So if you have any questions or comments as we move through, please interrupt us and we will do our best to address them. So when we started with this project in meeting and talking with Planning and Zoning and the Planning Commission, we decided that a new framework would be helpful for the plan. The current adopted plan is close to 1,200 pages, and with multiple plans, like the community plans, that didn't have a consistent format. So our intent with this is to make sure that the new plan for you is accessible, usable, very user-friendly, that it integrates the 2010 plan, two of the community plans, and reflects some reorganization and really addressing and incorporating new legislation. This process itself was an update to that plan, so it wasn't starting over from scratch. So the process itself looks a little different than it did back when the 2010 plan was being developed. But we think that it's worked out very well so far, and we're getting a lot of great input and feedback from the community. So in general, as we move through these various components, we've tried to make sure that all of the chapters have a similar layout. So you'll notice with all of them, there's a snapshot page that gives a brief overview of what's going on in the chapter. We give some background on the legislative and regulatory information that really not only informs but includes requirements for what is incorporated into those various areas. Then there's the bulk of the chapter, which is the true content that's discussed. And then we wrap it up with some best management practices or tools and techniques related to those various areas. And then wrap the whole chapter up with various strategies and actions. So there's a list of topics that are covered in the chapters, and these primarily come out of Maryland's land use article, what are required to be in a comprehensive plan, as well as a few optional elements that are important to the county. From the outset, we worked to define the various roles that different groups play within this process. So starting with the county commissioners, you initiated the plan update. We'll review the PC draft. We'll hold public hearings, vote on the draft, and adopt it. And those are the high-level functions that the county commissioners play in this process. The Planning Commission has the responsibility for developing the plan under state law, review and comments on the drafts that we are working on in cooperation with county staff, and then contemplates various requests, holds public hearings, and recommends approval of the draft to the county commissioners. As noted, we as the consultants were contracted to manage this update, take part in the analyses, lead various public discussions, incorporate that input, and then do all the behind-the-scenes work with graphics, the narrative writing, and things like that to get us to the drafts for your review. Working very closely with planning and zoning staff, as well as other county staff members, to incorporate all the needed input and all the information that they all have, working day to day within the county. Two crucial components of this group are our stakeholders, partners, technical committee, and the public. These groups, they do serve different roles, but all provide comments to us for incorporation into the documents, giving guidance on overarching concepts, and really being the voice of the community, so that we're able to make sure that the plan not only reflects the desires of both of the boards present here, but everyone in the county as a whole. So just very quickly, 5 counties in Maryland last updated their plans in 2010, including Queen Anne's County. The state now requires those plans to be updated every 10 years, so those 5 counties are in this same review cycle. So we are one of the counties that has initiated this process. Baltimore County has worked on their plan, which will likely be adopted in the spring. Anne Arundel has updated their plan, and that was adopted earlier this year. So we're right in line with those processes that are ongoing currently. We are well into the overall process. We've completed a community survey, 5 visioning workshops, 8 special topic workshops, and 8 technical committee meetings. The technical committee is comprised primarily of county staff from the various departments. And we've completed initial drafts of all of the chapters that comprise the plan itself. We worked on updating all of those drafts and reviewed it with the technical committee yesterday. As Amy mentioned, this was a marathon session, not quite page by page, but looking very in-depth at the draft to make sure that all comments are addressed. We'll spend the next week or so incorporating all of those remaining comments, and then that will go back to Planning and Zoning for one last look before that goes out into the Planning Commission packets for the October meeting. Beyond that, we have the 60-day comment period that is coming up, which is where we look for comments from the state, neighboring counties, the incorporated municipalities, and the public. We look for comments on the full draft plan, and then we will be holding another similar session that will be a joint update to let you know what those comments were and what our recommended responses are to what we've heard from those various groups. And then that will lead us into the Planning Commission's public hearing and recommendation, and that leads to the County Commissioner's public hearing and adoption. We've worked to make sure that all of the various comments that we received are detailed and tracked. Everything from what we hear from the technical committee to comments from the public, and those that are submitted through email or through our project website. So those are all documented with the individual comment itself, but then how it's being responded to, just to make sure that all of that input is being addressed in one way or another in the plan itself. So just a brief overview of status and where we are now, and then getting into more of the meat of this presentation, are overviews on the various chapters. So starting with our first chapter, the introduction, here's where we talk about the overall vision within the comp plan, outline the various guiding principles that are really guiding this effort, and all of the strategies that are developed in the subsequent chapters. Address policies and legal context, go over history, and then really talk about community outreach and what type of information has come into us. We do provide an appendix that goes into a very detailed overview of public outreach for anyone who wants to look at the specific comments. But in this chapter, really the major updates from the last plan are the vision statement that was updated along with the guiding principles. So we just have a quick snapshot of what those are right here. Still keeping a similar framework to what was within the 2010 plan, recognizing that the county is a great place to live, a good place to work, a good neighbor, a protective community, and a supportive county, but just tweaking and modifying the language within these statements to make sure that it's applicable for 2021, the current situation, and where we want to see ourselves moving over the next 10 years. And again, the guiding principles are those that really have helped align how we develop this process and move forward with the entire document. As we move on to the second chapter, this is a new summary chapter that really goes over some basics, just a general overview of the county, discussions of county geography, and then a look at demographic characteristics, for example, the census information, that really helps to inform the rest of the plan. Because this information isn't specific to any one chapter, we thought that having this overview chapter would be a good thing to just really put that at front to make sure that everything is on the same page as we move forward. We do have some initial 2020 census data that we're working to incorporate, so not all of that will be released by the time that the plan is reviewed, but that information that is, such as population counts, housing unit counts, we're working to incorporate that to make sure it's as up to date as possible. And then another change from the last plan is that we're providing some brief information about the various unincorporated communities within the county to make sure that we're acknowledging them, their importance, and recognizing them as a component in addition to the various growth areas, community planning areas, and the incorporated towns within the county. Our third chapter discusses community facilities and services, and this is really the first part of the plan where the adequate public facilities truly comes into play. Here we give an overview on the county's governance and administration, its structure, the boards and commissions, departments that really make up county government. We also include discussions on public safety, the various utilities that are present in the county, and that incorporates the water resources, so drinking water, sewer, stormwater, as well as solid waste and recycling and broadband availability. We also talk about education here, along with the school capacity information, go on to talk about libraries and parks and recreation. We do want to note with Parks and Recreation, that department is currently working on the update to their LPPRP, which is the Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan. Well, it takes me a second to think through that one, which is due, I believe it's early in 2020. So we've been coordinating with Nancy Scazzari on that to make sure that the appropriate elements related to Parks and Recreation are either in the comprehensive plan or the upcoming LPPRP, and we're not necessarily duplicating those efforts. So as mentioned within this section, the key issues or major updates include the discussion on adequate public facilities and how they relate to these various topic areas, some of which are described more in detail in other chapters. We give an overview of the most recent public school enrollment projections. These were the ones that Steve had mentioned, the most recent ones that are available, and then a discussion about the broadband needs and that high-speed telecommunication need throughout the county. We do have a few slides here that just kind of gives that overview of the public schools, the capacity, and then our enrollment projections. So if anybody has specific information about any of that, we can either address it or come back should those questions come up. As we move into Chapter 4, that's really where most of the items that the county staff have already talked about truly come into play, because it talks about the effects of these various elements on land use within the county. So this chapter really is a synthesis of information throughout the rest of the plan. It talks specifically about the existing land use or land cover that is in place today, discusses priority preservation, which focuses on agricultural and forest land preservation specifically, talks about the various preservation programs and the benefits and challenges in general. It also talks about future land use, and this is where we get into discussions on the various growth areas, the priority funding areas, impacts on water resources and due to water resources, and just talks about some those specifics and how they relate to future land use. And then there's also a discussion of current zoning, but of course that's a separate process. The comp plan itself does not modify zoning, so that is not being done through this process, but we recognize the link between land use and zoning. So here are major updates and key issues, again focused on the adequate public facilities and various capacity limitations and what that means to this comprehensive plan in the in this 10-year planning period. We talk about growth management and the growth areas and recommendations related to those. We talk about this, the preservation goals that were developed, how we've done, the progress we've made to get to the amount of land that has been preserved to date and what's remaining to meet the next goal that's set for 2030, and also talk about some scenic byway designations and things of that nature. For the past several meetings with the Planning Commission, we have discussed the comprehensive rezoning requests that were submitted. Again, right now, we're not doing anything to change zoning, but this is a process that goes hand in hand with the update to the comprehensive plan. So this is the chance for the public to submit these requests. And with the Planning Commission and the Technical Committee, we've been reviewing the submitted requests to help to form our approach to land use, to take a closer look at future land use for various areas and to see how consistent requests may be with future land use and if there are any resulting changes to any of those areas that should be made at this time. Just a little bit more of a discussion on that, or just a little bit of update. Obviously, existing land use really describes how land is being used currently, whereas zoning are the districts and regulations that designate what land uses are permitted in a particular area. And then future land use describes what the county has determined to be the most desirable type of use for a particular area. So while these are all different, they really are very connected and go hand in hand with one another. And of course, the future land use map is used when you are considering any future rezoning recommendations that may come up. And then just quickly, when we look at the comprehensive rezoning or rezoning in general, comprehensive rezoning again happens about every 10 years in coordination with the adoption of or enactment of the comprehensive plan strategies, and involves or that occurs in conjunction with the update of the zoning code and the zoning map. And it's called comprehensive because really, as part of this process, we are looking thoroughly and comprehensively at the various areas and what different future land uses would mean to the county. Conversely, what happens outside of that process are map amendments that there's a specific time frame within each year, but really puts more of the proof on the applicant to make sure that the county finds that the rezoning is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan and that the current zoning was applied erroneously, or that there's been a change in the neighborhood since the most recent comprehensive plan was adopted. So different things that have to be looked at depending on the type of rezoning that's occurring. We had another detailed meeting with our technical committee and looked at a number of resources. Those are the ones listed on the left here when making our recommendations for how the land use related to those should be addressed, and a number of review considerations, everything from the development potential should the land use change, capacity and allocations related to the sewer based on Schedule A, whether it led to expansion of an existing business or economic development, if there were similar requests within a geographic region, consistency with established zoning districts, future annexation and growth areas of the incorporated towns, and along with the resources shown at left. So we looked at the 46 different applications and came up with those recommendations that again have all been reviewed by the Planning Commission, and we are incorporating their recommendations into the draft that will be ready for review in October. Again, more for if there's any other detailed questions, but this is just a highlight of the conserved lands that have occurred. So here we're showing that right now that we've got over 238,000 acres that have been preserved through these various preservation programs, which is a fantastic number. It's very exciting to see how committed everyone, the county is to this type of preservation. And the county has set a goal to preserve 100,000 acres of land by 2030. And as mentioned, we're well on our way toward that with only about 16,000 acres left. Knowing what that rate has been over the past several years, we think that it's a very doable goal to meet that by 2030. With that, we transition to our environmental resources chapter. And this is where we discuss both sensitive areas and natural resources. Sensitive areas are those that are specifically called out in the land use article, but we look at the environment comprehensively here. There's also a more in-depth discussion about the water resources, and sort of those key issues and major updates here are again, highlighting the adequate public facilities discussion and incorporating climate change and hazard mitigation, which did not occur in the previous plan, and then talking about impervious surfaces and what that means to a watershed once you meet different percentage of coverages. While this skips ahead to Appendix D, the water resources element is really the meat of the background information that informs the some of the land use and environmental chapters. This is where we get into detailed information about the water and wastewater treatment systems, both from the county level and with the incorporated towns that have those systems. We talk about existing and projected conditions and incorporate information from the municipal growth elements into this detailed appendix. This is a snapshot of some of the slides that we used earlier. I will just skip ahead here to Chapter 6, which focuses on transportation. Here we talk about connections to various components, like how transportation is connected to land use, economic development, and land preservation. We discuss the roadway system overall and provide analysis on various components, and then also talk about network improvements, both that have gone on but then are either pending or desired in the next 10 years. Here, some of the more major updates or issues are a discussion of the Bay Bridge crossing study and what that may mean for the county. Highlighted in a lot of our public outreach was the need for additional multimodal connections. So how do we connect pedestrians and cyclists within the community? A desire for improved public access to the water and talking about the impacts of seasonal traffic, congestion, and safety concerns that occur within the community. Our discussion on historic and cultural resources again really talks about the benefits of preservation in general, highlights the many resources that are present in the community, and also highlights preservation in organizations that are present and work here. Key issues that were pinpointed were the progress that the county has made on the preservation front and potential loss of resources should preservation not progress further. It was discussed there was a desire from various parties to look into developing a historic preservation commission and the potential roles that commission may take on related to these efforts. Discussions of continuing with the historic property inventories that have been started in the past, and then just generally some various options for preservation funding to continue those preservation efforts. Economic Development and Tourism not only looked at various economic characteristics, but also at the county's various industries, the geographic economic centers, so the business parks, the town centers and growth areas, and then the business incentive zones, which there are a longer list of those areas. And then workforce development, so retention and expansion or attraction of various components within the workforce generally. So here we talked about some of the niche markets that we're seeing emerge, such as agritourism, things like that. We also talk about commercial growth, how to attract and develop the workforce, how that relates to land and agricultural preservation, and then differences due to geography, because of course we know that there's a big difference in the needs of, say, the communities within the Kent Island area and those in the northern county, the types of businesses and the types of commercial development that may occur or are needed. Housing, here we provide an inventory of the housing stock, talk about affordable and workforce housing and what those differences mean, and then look at a needs analysis for housing in the future. We worked closely with the consultants who were working for the county to develop the housing study and have incorporated that information. So this chapter does reflect a lot of that information that you've already seen. Here we talk about diversification of housing, meaning the types or the price points for various housing, affordable, what's called missing middle, and workforce housing, so trying to fill that gap in the type of housing that is not only available, but is available at an appropriate price point within the county. And then it was also brought up the potential need for a homeless shelter, or how to help the homeless population within the county. The Town Planning Framework chapter really talks about the relationship of the planning that goes on between the counties and the towns. So while the county has this comprehensive plan, all of the incorporated towns within the county also have their own plans and are responsible for developing those. But that neither is done in a vacuum. So here we've been coordinating with the towns and are continuing to do so to make sure that we are addressing and incorporating their municipal growth elements, their desired annexation boundaries and things like that, so that the plans are consistent moving forward. Chapter 11, community plans, is a discussion of the various county growth areas, which are the Chester-Stevensville area, the Kent Narrows, and Graysonville. So it was a desire of the county to incorporate these into the overall plan rather than have all of the standalone documents. So in this effort, we've completely incorporated those for Chester-Stevensville and Graysonville, and for a few different reasons, Kent Narrows still has a standalone plan, which is the bulk of the information, but we do provide an overview of that within this chapter, just referring to the standalone plan for the more detailed explanations and analysis as needed. So for each of these areas, again, we give a little bit of background about the community and the community plan, some profiles on the various communities, and then talk about the different planning issues, some of which are similar among all three of the planning areas, and some that are particular to just one. Here again, we've addressed the adequate public facilities and sewer capacity limitations, potential changes to the growth area. And one of the key items that came out of our comprehensive rezoning requests were a large number of applications were received from the Graysonville area, where there was a desire to have that be a more traditional Main Street corridor. So rather than look specifically at that, we are proposing to have a new future land use category that's really more Main Street corridor redevelopment, where this would involve perhaps consolidation of some of the zoning districts and reflect that traditional downtown Main Street corridor sense, but looking at that for all of the various community areas, not just those particular applications that came into us. And then particular to the various areas, again, for both of the Chester, Stevensville, and Graysonville communities, affordable housing was an issue that came up. Bay Bridge traffic, climate change and sea level rise. Connectivity, again, was a big one throughout all three of these plans. And then making sure to maintain the community character and looking for that vibrant and walkable downtown. Graysonville had many of those similars, but they were also looking for a way to try to leverage the public that travels through the area. So not just having drive-through traffic, but how can we try to make the most out of that, whether that's coming into businesses or things like that, to try to really just leverage those that previously were just moving through the area. And then here again, there was a nod to workforce education and development and how that could occur within this community. And I'm not forgetting the Kent Narrows piece. That'll just come in one moment because it's more, again, that standalone plan. But this document, the bulk of it really wraps up with this implementation chapter, where we talk about some of the various plan relationships and coordination efforts, but the bulk of this is an implementation matrix that is really the steps of strategies and action items that have been identified for the county to look at as funding becomes available, or as various priorities reach sort of the top of the list over the next several years. So here we've, again, tried to streamline it a little bit so that it's not quite as cumbersome as was the previous plan, and it's a little easier to really zoom in and see what the particular action item is, rather than being sort of a multi-step action item that's listed. Again, the Kent Narrows plan is a standalone plan and has a lot of the same items that were discussed in the overall community plan section. And here there was a key discussion on the niche markets and tourism that occurs within Kent Narrows, and that they are looking to see progress, multimodal connections, and discussions about design and architectural guidelines. So that very, maybe not so briefly, but briefly as we could, really tries to highlight the various key issues and updates for each of those sections within the plan. Just wanted to pause and see if anyone had any questions at this point.
Completely prepped for when this comes back to you for comment now.
So we'll just take just a few more moments. Again, we had a very robust public outreach related to this. Our 5 visioning workshops, we had over or close to 230 total participants related to that. Our 8 special topic workshops had over 280 participants. So all but one of these occurred in a virtual environment, so that was a new thing for us to really take on, but we think the feedback that we received was fantastic. We heard from a lot of people that we probably normally wouldn't have had these all been in person, and we were able to very easily document the comments that came in throughout those processes. We also had a project website that I know for a fact many of the people in the room are visiting and have signed up for project updates. So here again, we're using this website, updating it very frequently, and it has a lot of great information on it related to the outreach effort. And then again, a lot of you have signed up for our e-blasts or emails with status updates on the project and upcoming information. You know, we have over 500 people that are signed up to receive those, which again is a great number. Our website itself, we've had over 2,200 individual users access the website over 9,000 times. So that's a really great statistic for us. And then we've also had a number of questions of the week, which weren't as in-depth as the community survey, but just looking for a little bit of additional information on various topics throughout the process. You know, we've incorporated some of that information into the project as well. So to wrap it up, we've got that blown up a little bit more, the more pertinent pieces. Again, I mentioned a little bit earlier that we're working on getting that draft plan ready for Planning Commission review in October. That will really start our official public comment period, and we'll have more information on that at the October meeting, as well as posted on the project website, instructions for how to submit those comments and who to submit them to. And then, again, we'll come back together to give an update on the status at that point and review any comments that have come in and our recommendations for addressing them. And that will move into public hearings for the two bodies and recommendations, along with the eventual vote on the plan adoption, which is anticipated by the end of February.
And I do want to add, she was talking a lot about the online stuff and that activities, but we're getting some hard copies of the drafts printed and everything for that October, putting them at the libraries and other places so that those who may not have or want to see the old-fashioned way like I do, a hard copy in front of them to look through as well.
And that is all we have for our portion of the update. So again, if there are any comments or questions, we would be happy to address them.
The question I would pose is, a lot of times we've heard the comments about affordable housing, with the presentation about the limitations on our sewer and water capacities and aqua facilities. The land that is in play, that can be developed, is just going to become more and more valuable, which proves to be counterproductive to making affordable land or affordable housing, because you're going to put on that property a more expensive, unit, because there's really nothing. Any thoughts, any creative ideas, or how, the basic parts of economics from supply and demand are play out differently?
It's definitely a challenging topic, and the prices for housing have continued to increase. I think we're seeing that a lot more now, with post-COVID. A lot of the building materials and things have even increased in price. But along with the work that the housing department did with the housing study, there were several recommendations there, ranging from some discussions about possible incentives or looking at various programs to try to encourage affordable or workforce housing or things of that nature. Or the county has some initiatives already and regulations already in place on how that affordable housing can be developed. So I think it's really continuing to look at those programs and expand where it makes sense to do so, but also along with the recommendations that came out of the technical committee looking at adequate public facilities in general, trying to focus some of the development that would like to occur in the future in the towns where they have the capacity to accept that type of development.
I think the other piece too that we often forget is starting even like we do the discussion now of the communication, the limitations, the challenges, that educational element as well. We have that as one of the recommendations, is to try and do some things to educate people on what the needs of the county are, where to focus, try to get those things focused in that direction. So hopefully that'll help as well.
I think you're going to have to give the town some incentive to accept so-called affordable housing. don't know what those incentives might be.
I want more.
Before you transition to public comment, I just want to thank Lauren and Ray and Nikki and the whole team for they're not finished, but the Herculean effort that this has been. It is just an update, but it's a lot of work, and they've been extremely supportive of staff and the Planning Commission and very responsive to the technical committee and the community, and we're very grateful for your hard work. So I didn't want to close out without saying so.
Well, I'll add to that, Amy. I think you know, your efforts to make this plan and the opportunity to share concerns and ideas in the different social media venues that you guys have incorporated. I mean, obviously, just shy of pure connectivity or the lack thereof, you guys have certainly made this in a world that we live in that has relied solely on virtual meetings. You guys have, in my opinion, have done a great job.
Thank you, and we do want to thank the staff. I mean, the staff has been great in helping and working with us. The number of brainstorming and ideas we've thrown out and tried to get it moving has really been a collaborative effort, and it's just been a great team effort on that side.
Take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for press and public comment.
Good call.
Thank you.
Good call.
Big room's got a. All right, doing a public comment, Howard Dean.
They're going to be right behind us here, so sorry about that.
Good evening. I have read the recent draft, and the draft does not fully articulate what I think the rural community says it wants. In short, agriculture is the largest business sector in Queen Anne's County, and that should be emphasized repeatedly in the plan. Scott McGleish and I have gathered signatures from all over other farmers and farmland owners from around Queen Anne's County. And here's what they say. They want the plan to reflect a greater commitment to agriculture by working to find additional resources to preserve as much productive land as possible and designate the Route 301 corridor from Queenstown to Millington as a county agriculture scenic byway. This should not be hard. Most farmers in the area use 301 to move equipment, and it's important to get this designation included in the plan for a variety of reasons that support the county's commitment to our farmers. Since agriculture is the largest business sector in Queen Anne's County, this should be a high priority. Don't get this recommendation confused with the state or federal scenic byway highway programs. That's not what Scott and I are asking for. We simply want the comp plan to show that the agriculture community wants 301 and some of our primary roadsides that go through important agriculture areas reflected as county agriculture scenic byway as a goal, and that's it. I hope the Planning Commission and the county commissioners will support our farmers by finding a way to make this a priority. Thank you.
Jay Falstead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jay Falstead, Queen Anne's Conservation Association. First, I want to echo Commissioner Dumanel's comments towards staff and the consultant during this pandemic time. It's been very difficult to arrange meetings, and I think you guys have done just about as well as anybody could do under those circumstances. Commissioners, both to the county commissioners and also the Planning Commission, last month I made reference to the intergovernmental panel on climate change report, which was released earlier in August. And I want to emphasize that here for this meeting, and given the importance of what's in that document, I'll emphasize it until I'm blue in the face. One thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is that our current draft doesn't include references to that document. And so here's where things are. And I encourage everybody to at least review that document if you can. If you go to the website, it's IPP or ipcc.ch. Don't read the whole thing. It's a 4,000-page document. I'm not recommending that anybody do that. A lot of it isn't even applicable to North America. There are other areas around the globe that are facing the same challenge. But the parts that are relevant to North America show that the West Coast is going to dry out. It also shows that some of the agricultural lands in the center part of the country will also dry. And what that's going to mean, based on what I'm reading in the report, is not only will agricultural lands on the East Coast be more important, but also there's going to be a human migration of people from the West Coast who are faced with limited water resources and having to breathe forest fire smoke. They're going to start moving. It's happening already. And so just be mindful of that. And finally, I'll close with this one paragraph. There was an article that appeared in The Economist on August 14th that gets into the whole climate change and the economics of it. And here's what the final paragraph says, because it applies to you guys. Deciding how much action to take on climate change is politically hard because it means imposing high costs today for largely hidden benefits tomorrow. But when, in November, the world's governments meet again in Glasgow to discuss how they can improve the insufficient action they have taken to date, they need to think like people who have seen blood in the water. Commissioners, there is blood in the water. Just read that report. You'll see it. It'll become clear to everybody. I just urge you to read the document, and if you read just the summary for policymakers, I think you'll get the message loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Gigi Wendell.
Good evening. I'm Georgiana Winley, Executive Director, the Kent Narrows Development Foundation, and I just wanted to give all of you an update of where we are with our community plan. I want to first of all thank Wallace and Montgomery and the Planning Office for working hard with us to update our community plan and to make it a standalone plan. But making it a standalone plan is not the easiest thing in the world right now because a lot of things have changed within the Kent Narrows. Our maps have changed, our demographics have changed, our buildings and structures have changed. So it's taking a little bit more time than we would like to, have. Our deadline to submit this to Wallace and Montgomery is tomorrow, and we will have all of our comments into you by tomorrow, but we want to make it clear that there is still key information and data that is missing, some from the technical team and some from citing certain research and census data and things like that. So what we're going to turn in is almost done, but just like aligning a car, there's going to be parts of it that are out of alignment, and we need to take some time to alignment. So what we are requesting is another review of the plan before it goes to you after we turn it into Wallace and Montgomery. And that's it. Thank you.
Barry Waterman.
Barry Waterman, Centerville. There's a lot of good in the plan, and honestly, this process has gone far smoother than any comp plan I have seen in the past. But there are a couple issues. First, if the plan is going to state that the TMDL limits are really the crucial thing facing the county, the opening of the comp plan, should there be an answer, should be right in the plan. Should say in the plan that if there's an answer, through court action, through government changing the settlement, whatever, that the plan gets opened as a result of that so that we can revise the plan accordingly. If the plan is to shift growth to them, the TMDL limits of the towns and a rough estimate of their growth capacity should be noted in our comp plan. We have two competing goals or contradictory goals. One is to direct development to the towns, but the other is to direct it away from major travel corridors. Every single town we have is bisected by multiple major travel corridors. One of those goals needs to go away. In the land use section, the preface says that 21,000 acres of ag and forest lands have been lost to residential development. I'm paraphrasing that. Either that conclusion is wrong or the data is wrong. That residential development is eating through the county acreage at an unsustainable pace, because they can't both be right. Table 4.2 says we've gained, I believe, 6,000 acres of forest land, but we've only gained 8,000 acres of all residential combined, and you can't get to 21,000 acres with those numbers. They just don't add up. The total county acreage from one table to the next doesn't match. They're 2,000 acres different. The land use section needs to paint as accurate a picture of past land use as possible to defend whatever your new land use issues are going to be. And then ag preservation. The comp plan spends a lot of time talking about ag preservation, but ignores completely the 2012 Sustainable Growth Act, which, along with the critical area law and smart growth, is the most impactful piece of legislation in a generation for Queen Anne's County. Those things dramatically reduce farmland values. They've they basically ended rural development, which had been a predominant pattern of development in Queen Anne's County. And regardless of whether you think those things are good or bad, there's been no development pressure in the ag district since 2013 because there can't be. You can't have more than 7 lots on any parcel, no matter how many acres it is, unless we adopt tiers, and then you could go to 15, neither of which are viable. And the issue is that that section leaves all of the pre-2012 techniques for preservation in place and indicating that they're important, such as NCDs, PDRs, TDRs, which are completely dead and gone and of really they're not viable. So if you want to come up with money for preservation, we should continue to seek it from the state. And you got to dream up something new because stuff that's dead can't be resurrected. Thanks.
All right, that's everybody on the list. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak? Close the public comment.
We can adjourn and reset the room.
All right. So we're going to adjourn, and then we'll come back with just the county commissioners meeting.
Hey, listen.
All right,
you need me to call
meeting
Parks
order?
and Recs?
We're back to order.
All right, commissioners.
Oh, even than we do back there.
All right, we're back to our normal county commissioner meeting now, and first up, we have a presentation from our circuit court judge, Lynn Knight, and if you want to turn to tab number 6 behind the big package that we just covered.
I think you're
in the
supposed to say
comprehensive plan.
all rise.
Oh, that's right, all rise, yeah.
I'm off the clock right now, so.
So yeah, tab number 6, there is a piece in there from Judge Knight, and she's going to talk about the Queen Anne's County Problem-Solving Court, Adult Drug Court Recovery Court,
Long overdue.
whatever that is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Long overdue. It's interesting when I've started preparing for this position as circuit court judge, one of the things that I knew I wanted to have on my agenda was to bring drug court to Queen Anne's County. I didn't really realize how far behind the times we were. Drug courts have been around for 25 years in the state of Maryland. We are the only county in the state of Maryland that does not have an active drug court at all.
Wow.
We have some, the state's attorney has a first-time offender diversion kind of program that they run internally themselves, but a structured program the county does not have. And there's money to fund these programs, so there's plenty of opportunity for us to get this going. So I put a group together. As you can see, there's a team advisory board. We've already identified people. We've been doing some meetings, some in person, some in Zoom, and have started working on our outline of what our program looks like. The nice thing about being last in line is that we don't have to recreate the wheel. We are pulling and looking at all the resources from other programs and what is working and what is not working, and understand that we have to start small and see how it goes. We're looking at the smaller rural counties and the issues that they have struggled with. Transportation, of course, you hear that every time someone comes and talks to you about services in the county, and program resources. But the reason I wanted to come talk to you is to explain where we are in the process, because we're now really starting to move forward. Once we have finished our outline of our program and have all the key players, which are certainly the court, but the health department, state's attorney, detention center, parole and probation, everybody's signed on to be a participant, we present our plan to the state court administrator. Once she approves that, it goes to judicial council, which then gets sent to chief judge for approval. So court systems require the oversight and approval of what you're going to do. We'll soon be ready to get that. I hope later this fall we now have a new chief judge. Judge Getty was just appointed. Judge Barbera just retired. We're going to get on his agenda to get our program approved. New funding from Administrative Office of Courts would not be available until July, but they have discussed with us some mid-year funding, so we could at least hire a coordinator, which is the key success, the person who keeps all these pieces together, because it can't be the administrative judge, because I am the only judge in the circuit court, and I have many other responsibilities. But I would be the drug court program judge. I would be the one assigned to hear the cases. One, because it is my desire to do that. Already hope that I am making some impact in some of the cases that we hear and taking interest in certain persons and helping get them to resources in the county to see how successful that they can be. This program is going to be a predisposition, which means they take the plea, but they don't get sentenced. They enter into the drug treatment program and then go through all the program steps. The average model is about 18 months, and they have to graduate through different phases. We've outlined some phases that are in there, and move on to graduation. At the end, if they're successful in completing all of the 18 months and graduate, the arrangement with the state's attorney is that the case gets dismissed. So there is high incentive.
So, question. So what if halfway through the program, they fail?
And they get sentenced.
So it's kind of like a probation before judgment thing? So
Yes.
you'll bring back the original charges?
Well, they've already pled guilty to the charge, so so they just haven't been sentenced.
So then you'll do the sentencing at that point?
Yes, yes. And what you have to realize, it is a small group of people who will participate in this program, because not everybody
Going to qualify.
is going to qualify. And they have to have real incentive, but lack the structure and the resources to be successful. They may have tried before and failed. What we all know about, you've learned, Queen Anne's County Goes Purple, is that relapse is part of these people's life. So the first phase, we expect relapse. Their drug screens are not going to be clean. But then what do you do about that? So what is, what's the punishment? What's the sanction? And then, from after, a period of time when they are, when the drug screens are clean, then they move into a next phase. They don't have to report as often. They don't have to, one part of the program, which is an expense, is regular testing 3 times a week. You're not going to wait. If you are going to test positive, we are going to know about it. And they mix up the screenings, so that if they're trying to cheat the screening by getting used to certain drugs show up on certain panels, then we mix up the panels and we move, so they have worked very hard. There's lots of research out there on how to really capture this for people to be successful. That's the idea, is to be successful, reduce recidivism, keep them out of our prison system, keep them from committing crimes in our community that are related to their drug use, burglaries, robberies, thefts, breaking and enterings, all those things that go into feed that drug habit. The idea is to these certain group of people who qualify. The other big piece of this is the evaluation. Who is going to be successful? Joanna Walter at the Queen Anne's County Health Department Addictions Program has already gone to the National Drug Institute training. She just went in August with Maggie Thomas. And they would like to be she would like to be our screeners. So we're looking at which tool is most effective in screening out a good substance abuse screening tool, as well as a mental health screening tool. Those two things have to happen before they would be eligible and be evaluated to be into the program.
Who sets the parameters for who qualifies? Is that you, or is that the state, a model that you're going to use? And
there's a model, but it is the team advisory board, the team that would be meeting before someone would be reviewing what their credentials are. That's why the evaluations, substance abuse and mental health, have to happen. What the charge is, so the referral is initially going to come from the state's attorney's office. They're going to be looking at the charges that come in and who they believe is someone that would be eligible, and then getting them screened. Then we have a team. The team sits down and goes through that applicant to see if they are eligible. The applicant has to do an application. They have to sign, contracts and commitments about what they're going to do, and then start targeting what resources are absent in their life, out in the real world, that lead back to their drug addiction. Housing, transportation. They don't have a valid driver's license. What are we going to do to get them a valid driver's license? And that's where the program coordinator comes in and working with all these different pieces. We actually do have very good resources in Queen Anne's County, but people struggle getting to and from and into every resource that they need to be successful in having a clean and sober and productive lifestyle.
This, Judge Knight, the team advisory board, the list of folks that you have on here, are these volunteers, or is there a stipend? It sounds like there's an upside to this whole thing, and there's no downside other than funding, but there are funding sources.
Well, they are, so like the state's attorney has designated Chelsea Ensel, which is one of the prosecutors in the office. So part of her duty assignments will be doing this, but that means that her other duty assignment, So that's the other reason of coming and discussing and getting all of your support, is that our other county partners are going to be affected by this program. because they have to designate someone to be on this team, with the team meets every other week, you know, for an hour, hour and a half. But there is funding also for that, to supplement that. Part of the funding that comes from the AOC also comes from the National Justice Institute, which is the supportive programs, like having Joanna Walters' time to do these evaluations. It doesn't come out of the health department budget. She's billing for, you know, $350 for those evaluations that gets reimbursed out of the contract. So they do aside to support the resources, the people who are doing the work, and then the services that need for the individual.
In setting this up and looking at other counties, what is an average success rate? I mean, is it 50%, 60% success rate?
It's less than that.
Really?
Much larger than that, you said?
Less.
Oh, less than that.
Okay.
The national average is about 20%. There are 3,500 drug courts roughly in the state, in the country, that are operational, have been operational. Maryland's average runs between 40 and 45%. So we are doing pretty well. Last year, they had the statistics went way down with COVID, with the courts being shut down, with the resources. You know, you couldn't go to a meeting, you had to do it on Zoom. Well, these people don't have a computer. So there was a lot of relapse, and people just kind of dropped out and got lost. So their rates went down. I think that we don't have last year's full report, but that's the other thing. If you want to look at the Maryland program, I didn't print it out because it's like 39 pages, and we are trying to be careful with my budget money. So Maryland Problem Solving Courts does a report that's posted on the Judiciary website. I can send Margie the link for all of you if you want to get in and read it. And it breaks down each kind of the county programs, the people who have come into the programs, the grant awards that have gone out. So that's a good thing for you to know. But so last year's number, so 2020, throughout the state of Maryland, they had 624 new people just for that year, because remember, it's an 18-month program. And 382 of those graduated. Or 382 people graduated. So some of those from the year before. And then, you know, they had 52 that they just lost completely. They don't even know where these people are right now.
Do they have data on the age groups? Like, is it more effective from, 18 to 30 or older?
It's more effective for 25-year-old to 35-year-old.
Trying to break those habits before they get too ingrained.
Right. Because once they get into the 30s and 40s, the number of offenses that they have is probably going to take them out, because they've failed on probation before. They're right back out
They
doing
don't
it.
even qualify for the program to begin.
So yeah, under the disqualifiers, so say you've been charged with any of those offenses, would you have to have been convicted to be disqualified, or just charged? So like if you were charged with CDS but not convicted, say there was a loophole, something happened, but technically you were charged with, is that something you're going to look at and say, well, wait a minute, this person's got that mentality?
That's a team decision, and it depends on the individual. Were they charged with it and not convicted because they took a plea deal for something else, or because they didn't have evidence, or because do you know what I mean? There's lots of reasons that people don't get convicted. So it's really, and that because the state's attorney is part of this team, if it's someone that they are not comfortable with, they're not going to get recommended. So, but certainly, violent offenders, sex offenders, any of those things, because they're working very closely with people in our community and resources, and so we want to make sure that everybody's safe as well while we do this.
So my only other question is, so your timeline, you have the first 60 days, that's your acute stabilization. So honestly, I got to believe in my head the first 6 days are the most critical days, because that's the time you're going to fall back into whatever you were doing, more than likely. But I see that, so what if you, I mean, I just see where it's going to be really hard. You have somebody come in, they don't have a job, they don't have this, you know, the self-worth isn't there, and there's no, I guess, inpatient part of this, which to me, you almost have to get them away from that, whatever got them where they were initially, to be able to even coax them into the medical assistance and the job and the transportation and all.
That may be part of what is generally, it's oftentimes a part of the sentence, so, you know, and once the referral, the evaluation is done, they may determine they need to go to inpatient before they're eligible to do anything.
Okay.
And it hasn't been too difficult lately to get beds at Whitsett Center. I mean, I've been sending people to Whitsett Center pretty frequently. They have beds opening up. Gardenzia has beds that are open. They take a little bit longer to get scheduled, but we can generally get people in. So we've been doing fairly effective with getting people into treatment. Usually treatment is detox anymore. 21 days, it's detox.
Right.
It's really not treatment. So it's going to be recommended for intensive outpatient. They're going to have to meet with their caseworker every week. They have to get tested 3 times a week. They have to go to their, you know, maybe their therapist once a week. Most of them will not be working generally the first, 60 days because they have lots of things to do to get themselves started. And the goal, as you see, the first 60 days is that they stop using. And so that's what you have to focus on. And not a lot of other things in life are going to be happening for them in getting all these pieces in place.
I'm trying to remove the triggers from their life too. Yeah.
One of the nice things that you all should be aware of, since this is a great time for me to come to talk to you because you've gone through all this QAC goes purple, so you are aware of things that are happening, but the peer program at the health department, the addictions program, matching peers with people is really going to be very effective. They've just started it, and I think that is going to be a big thing. I'm already trying to hook up defendants at the detention center. They go right in there and meet with them so that when they're going to get out, they start. And the peers know all the stuff that's out there that can help match them to getting their driver's license, finding a place to live, getting into a sober living environment. What does that mean? What are the good ones? What are the bad ones? Very happy to have them working with us.
Great. I mean, I got to say that,
One of your big issues.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, it is. And a 40% success rate would be outstanding. It really would, for what you have to deal with addiction and the opioids. So, anything we can do?
You got our support.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. At this point, I'm coming to you for support, knowing that it's going to affect the other county agencies. So but there's looking for grant money. It's no different than our family services grant that we have from AOC. The county office has to help us administer it, so it does require some work of other people. But everybody, as you see that team advisory board, the first meeting that I had, there was 35 people show up. So people want this in our county, and people are committed to coming to the table to help out. So that's the first start.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Judge Knight. All right, Commissioners, we can begin our new business section of tonight's agenda. If you want to turn to tab number 2, we have the Department of Public Works, and they have 3 items for your consideration this evening. So they're going to make their way up to the desk. Item number 1 on page 1, tab 2 again, is the electric vehicle charging station grant agreement. And Chief Engineer Lee Egger is here, so can I get a motion on that, please?
I move that electric vehicle charging station grant agreement with the Electric Vehicle Institute for the installation of EV charging stations at the Department of Public Works be accepted.
Second.
Motion and a second by Commissioner Wilson. Discussion, questions? Tell us about it.
You bet. As you may or may not be aware, several years ago we had some energy initiatives which permitted us to install solar panels, electric vehicle charging stations, as well as acquiring some electric vehicles for the county, of which we have a few in our fleet. At the Department of Public Works, we have 3 electric vehicle charging stations that have been in place for several years, and they've worked well. However, the one thing that the charge point station that we have requires a service agreement which unlocks the station in order for us to charge vehicles. Recently, we were approached by the Electric Vehicle Institute, or EVI. They're an advocacy group which tries to promote the advancement of electric vehicles and chargers. They receive funding, and with that funding, they will install charging stations. They offered us the opportunity to replace the existing charge point stations that we have with EVI chargers that are basically comparable in terms of their charging capabilities and capacity. The one difference being, instead of needing to have an access system with a key that the county needs to pay about $1,000 a year to have function, these would be very similar to the setup you would have in your home. We just simply plug cars in at no cost. So it really seems like a no-brainer to do that. Yes, there is an opportunity that they wouldn't be locked out, for instance. However, because we have the vehicles parked there all the time and the way they're situated, it's really not practical for anyone but the county to access those charging stations. So we put forth this agreement for your consideration to replace those charging stations.
Any questions?
I have a question, sir.
Yes.
So it costs $40 or $50 to fill your car up at a gas station. How many kilowatt hours and of what expense is it to charge a car or a Tesla or something if it was depleted, or an electric car, typically?
Gosh, I'd have to do the math on that. I've not done that recently. I will tell you that several years ago, my wife was considering an electric car, and we were looking at getting the county vehicles. I did the math at that time, and I found surprisingly that, and I'm going off memory here, but it was a couple years ago, when you take the cost of plugging in the electric car and some maintenance, that with what you were paying for gas, which at the time was to something, whatever the case may be, it only ended up saving comparable to, like, it was less than $1 per gallon, maybe 50 cents per gallon. Now that was a few years ago, and then of course there's the environmental benefits, which arguably are immeasurable. So, right. And this was older technology. I'm sure that things have improved, and I know electric cars have gone a long way in terms of their capacity, but there is a savings to having an electric vehicle. It is cheaper to use. Unless you're paying $1,000 a year to have the charging stations, and that cuts into the savings, thus this proposal here.
No, this is a very science-minded community up here, so I thought they'd want to know. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, 5-0, motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. All right, our next item is item number 2 on pages 7 through 9. This is the Chesapeake Heritage and Visitors Center Bulkhead Rehabilitation project. So could I get a motion on that, please?
I move to award the Chesapeake Heritage and Visitor Center Bulkhead Rehabilitation Project to Mertech Incorporated of Salisbury, Maryland, in the amount of $1,044,188.
Second.
Want to tell us about it?
Sure, Commissioners. Here tonight with me is Mr. Paul Seiden, Civil Engineer 3 with Department of Public Works, and he is the designer and the project manager for this project. This project is a 522-foot timber bulkhead replacement project with associated dredging at the Chesapeake Heritage and Visitor Center. Included in the bid are 3 alternatives. Alternative 1 is a new boat ramp for the DNR boat. Alternative 2 is a new T-shaped boat docking pier. Alternative 3 is a boat lift for the DNR boat. We had 2 bids as part of the September 2nd bid. Mertech Incorporated of Salisbury, Maryland was the low bidder at a base bid of $793,245. Adding up all alternatives, as you said, it's $1,044,188. Not enough money is in the budget. Insufficient funds are there, so we contacted DNR, and of the $388,245 needed to complete the project, DNR came up with 50%. The project is a 50-50 cost-sharing project with DNR for the base bid. So they came up with the $194,122.50 needed, and we need to come up with that money to continue with the project. I reached out to finance, and they've indicated that there are sufficient funds in the 2021 bond proceeds to complete the project. I would like to note that alternatives 1, 2, and 3 are completely funded by DNR. There is no county match for those. So the total cost to the county for this project is $396,625.50. Now, this project is on a timetable, trying to get it completed and opened by May of 2022. With that, we recommend to award the project immediately so we can give notice to proceed.
How old's the bulkhead we have there?
That's a good question. James Wood is here. I'm not sure if James might know. I don't think anybody knows.
And what are we expecting the life of this one to be?
50 to 60 years.
Last question, how come we were so far under on our original budget? Materials, what is it?
The material cost is, I think, up by 30%. And also, this project also includes prevailing wages, so that increased the cost as well.
The next lowest bid was approximately $200,000 over this one, over the low bid.
Lower? I mean, higher than this
It was over 1.2 for everything.
We met, we talked about this 2 years ago? What has taken so long? That's my question. And with also, I mean, you have a drawing in here, but what were the final decisions? I know we were talking about drainage, regrading, what materials were going to be used for the boardwalk area. Can you elaborate on any of that also?
Well, the project initially was kind of looked at as one large project, and they were separated out to move forward. We've had the permit for this for a while,
right,
but we had to finalize the design and get it out, and we went ahead and moved forward with this one, so that now we have to go back and finish the design of the other project.
But don't you, I mean, if you're gonna put some sort of drainage system, you're gonna have to get through this new bulkhead, right?
Right.
So, I mean, has that been designed, or is that gonna be, you're gonna cut through it at a later date? What would?
Yeah, there's a part of a drainage system designed with this. That area is going to be changed into a stormwater feature in the future, once the part 2 of this project's designed.
So then that part 2 is gonna, who's paying for that?
Part 2 is, my understanding, is funded by the county.
So part 2.
And currently we have to go back and finish the design, and with that, we'll revise the cost estimates and come back for the FY23 budget cycle to request any additional money at that point.
Next spring, the bulkhead will be done, but part 2 will not.
Correct.
Okay, so we're gonna have that dirt and everything else to deal with.
It's going to be graded out, and like I said, with the storm drain system there, it'll drain with that storm drain system.
This
This will be
bulkhead's
planted in that area.
And this bulkhead's higher for storm surge and flooding and everything else. Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, 4 in favor, 1 abstain. Commissioner Jack Wilson abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, Commissioners, our next item number 3, on pages 10 through 64. This is also for the Sanitary Commission. So does this go in both sets of minutes? Is that correct? This is Resolution 21-16, which authorizes the MDE Phase 2 loan for the South Kent Island Sanitary Project. So, can I get a motion on that, please?
I move to approve Resolution 21-16, authorizing the second loan from the Maryland Department of the Environment for the SKI project.
Second.
Okay, and we have Director of Public Works, Alan Quimby, and our Director of Budget and Finance, Nicole Heffer, is here. If you have any questions about this is the Phase 2 loan from the state for
fairly routine, and we went through this with phase 1. We'll go through it with phase 3 and 4, hopefully. It's just the paperwork you have to go through to get a few $1 million.
I mean, it is what it is.
They're standing by, but no.
No questions.
Anybody else any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. All right. That is all we had for the Department of Public Works. We can move to our regular action items under tab number 3. And our first item is a proclamation for Library Card Sign-Up Month 2021.
Bill.
Proclamation specialist, I guess. Actually, before I read this, I want to raise your hand, commissioners, if you have a library card. A current library card. Because you know they expire if you don't use them.
All right, I don't know if it's current.
Okay, there we go. This is actually, it's important. Proclamation, Library Card Sign-Up Month 2021. Whereas a library card is the most essential school supply of all, and whereas libraries and librarians play a crucial role in the education and development of children. And whereas libraries offer a variety of programs to stimulate an interest in reading and learning, and whereas library resources serve students of all ages, from early literacy to STEM programs and research databases. And whereas signing up for a library card is the first step on the path towards academic achievement and lifelong learning, and whereas a library card gives a student the tools that foster success in the classroom and beyond, and whereas librarians create welcome and inclusive spaces for students of all backgrounds to learn together and engage with one another, and whereas the library card empowers all people to pursue their dreams and explore new passions and interests, and whereas libraries are constantly transforming and expanding services to meet the evolving needs in their communities. Now, therefore, we, the county commissioners of Queen Anne's County, hereby proclaim September as Library Card Sign-Up Month, and the Queen Anne's County encourages everyone to sign up for their own library card today. And I would expect that my fellow commissioners will be able to produce a library card by our next meeting.
It's a challenge accepted.
Boom. I don't have the mic. I'll drop it. So get a library card, you guys.
Okay.
Commissioner Stevie Wilson, we can do the next one.
Actually, our item number 2 is proclamation for National Senior Center Month, and Director Kathy Willis asked if we could hold that one until next meeting when we do our Senior Center tour. So we will do that, so we can pass on that one and move to item number 3 on page 3, and this one is for character counts, responsibility.
You're terrible. Commissioner Moran, you have it open?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Character Counts Pillar of the Month, Responsibility, Proclamation 21-43. Whereas Queen Anne's County was declared a Character Counts community, and whereas all citizens have been called upon to embrace the 6 pillars of character and incorporate them into their daily activities and to model these traits of good character. And whereas the Character Counts Pillar of the Month for September is responsibility. And whereas all citizens will incorporate this value in their daily lives by being accountable and consider the likely consequences of their behavior. And whereas all citizens will strive to pursue excellence by doing one's best to be diligent, reliable, careful, prepared, and informed. And whereas all citizens will attempt to preserve and finish what they start. And whereas all citizens will look for ways to do their work better. And whereas all citizens will use self-control and self-discipline. Phil. Now, therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County, do hereby proclaim and designate the Character Counts Pillar of the Month for September to be responsibility. This month's proclamation was written by DFC Alex Cooper with the Sheriff's Office. Signed, the Queen Anne's County Commissioners. Bada bing.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Moran. Nice job. Okay, moving right along. Item number 4 on page 4 is the Equitable Sharing Agreement and Certification for the Queen Anne's County Sheriff's Office, and this is an annual certification that must be filed with the Department of Justice to report any federal confiscated funds and how the money was spent. No federal funds were confiscated, but nevertheless, we have to do the report. So could I get a motion, please, on that?
I move to approve the Equitable Sharing Agreement and Certification for the Queen Anne's County Sheriff's Office.
Second.
If the funds are confiscated, who gets it?
We didn't confiscate anything.
What if someone does?
Well, it depends on, actually, it depends on the agencies that are involved in the raid.
Distributed.
They distribute it evenly.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen us get anything.
It's been a while.
We have.
We've got
The last 3 years we have.
Oh, no, not in the last 3.
Yeah, the last 3 years we have, for sure.
Did we vote on that? I heard a motion in a second. Did we?
Been a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Motion carries. Next one.
Okay, Commissioners, item number 5 is a similar certification for the Queen Anne's County Drug Task Force. Again, no federal funds were confiscated this fiscal year. Could I get a motion on that one, please?
I move to approve the Equitable Sharing Agreement certification for the Queen Anne's County Drug Task Force.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5-0. Motion carries.
So just a curious question about that. If you seize money, I mean, that's a federal tender, right? So why wouldn't that be considered? Because you always read about the Drug Task Force going in and finding money. I know the drugs aren't, but the money itself, why is that not? Wouldn't that be federal because it's a federal tender that we should get back? Just curious.
Well, the Drug
So we
Task
do,
Force,
but we do though. I mean, if there's a drug raid, there's, so if it's the drug task force, my understanding is there's multiple agencies involved in that drug task force that's knocking down the door. So based on the bounty of that raid, it's distributed evenly amongst those agencies.
I
Money,
think that isn't so. I think they keep it. The Drug Task Force keeps their own money, I think. I'm not sure, but check that one with Sheriff.
Okay.
We'll get
Todd
you.
will find out and get back to us.
We will get you an update.
Good
on
there
that,
you go.
Commissioners. Yes, sir.
moving right along.
Okay, item number 6 on pages 16 and 17, we have some legal documents for an amended open space easement on the John Ramsey Administrative Subdivision, and this is just to reconfigure the open space so that he can build on the property and not tear down a barn, essentially. So, can I get a motion on that, please?
I move to approve and sign the amended open space easement to accommodate a new building pad on the lands of Mr. John Ramsey.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Motion carries.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 7 on page 18 through 20 is an equipment purchase for the Department of Parks and Recreation for 2 2021 Ford Transit Connect vans from the Apple Ford Lincoln contract for a total cost of $44,670. Can I get a motion on that, please?
Yeah. I move to authorize the Department of Parks and Recreation to purchase 2 2021 Ford Transit Connect vans from Apple Ford Lincoln in the amount of $44,670, utilizing the Maryland Fleet Government Contract BPO number 001B1600376 discount. Funding to come from the Department of Parks and Recreation's FY22 auto vehicles operating budget.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion?
So what do they use the vans for?
That's for recreation, probably. So that'd be my guess.
Custodial crew?
Custodial.
Custodial crew, yeah.
There you go.
And these are.
So just moving
Custodial stuff.
folks around to,
Those that clean the bathrooms and the buildings.
Okay.
We have a lot of, two staff that go one end of the county to the other daily and need a way to get there and bring supplies that's protected from the weather.
okay.
Not a
I
open
mean, I
pickup
guess
truck.
you think of Parks and Recreation of trucks and mowers and
Right.
pickups and things like that, and you don't even think about the fact that we need to move people around, so, good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Motion carries.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, Commissioners. And James. Item number 8 on page 21 is the proposed contract with Zambelli Fireworks Company to provide next year's fireworks show on July the 4th, 2022.
I move to authorize the Department of Parks and Recreation to execute the fireworks contract with Zambelli Incorporated for the July fireworks celebration to be held on Monday, July 4th, 2022, with a rain date of Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, in the amount of $35,000.
Second.
30.
We have a motion and a second.
30,000.
No, I said 35, and you seconded it. So we have a motion and a second.
Any discussion on
Any
Commissioner
discussion?
Moran's?
Have a little better grand finale this year?
Oh, come on. Come on, man.
So you wanted 35.
Yeah.
And so quick on the second, I committed us to 35.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
There you
Here we go.
Come on, it's our July 4th.
Better,
man.
better fireworks next year.
Better fireworks. They were great last year, now they're gonna be better. Come on.
It was a very good show last year.
Yeah, it was an awesome show.
5-0 in favor,
Not a brother.
35,000.
Not out of common sense.
That's right.
You know what? I'm not going to motion
That's
so
called the-
fast. I'm
that's
not going to
called the
second your
rope-a-dope.
motion so fast.
You noticed I dropped out?
Okay, moving right along. Item number 9 on pages 22 and 23, we have a request for economic development incentive funding for the Kent Island crab cakes. And the EDIF recommended an award for a walk-in freezer for $38,500, less a 10% contribution from the company, conditioned upon 2 full-time jobs within 3 years of the disbursement of funds. So can I get a motion on that, please?
I'll make the motion. If there's a second.
There's a photograph of the
Yeah, I saw it.
freezer there on page 23. See what you're buying.
I don't have it in my book. I'll make a motion, let me find it.
Here.
I move to approve the disbursement of $34,650 economic development incentive funding to MRS Incorporated, trading as Kent Island crab cakes for the purpose of purchasing a Bally Walk-in freezer. The disbursement funds is contingent upon a signed agreement between the EDIF Commission and the company outlining the condition of the agreement.
Second. Discussion?
I don't think we ought to be doing what a bank should be doing.
Heather, how much do we have left in the EDIF fund?
Come on, Heather, come on up, Heather.
Yeah.
We have our Economic Development and Tourism Director, Heather Tonelli, who works with EDIF.
Around $280,000 left. And we have set the bar for a maximum of $50,000 loans.
How many applications do you have in the queue?
This is it right now. There's 2 in very preliminary, I wouldn't even call it a queue, very preliminary, where they've requested information about it. We've talked to them. It's a process. We've been working with them for over a year.
A
And
year
our
now?
crab cakes, yeah.
Okay.
They've seen significant growth and they're just at capacity. And in order to take that next step and be able to hire, they have to have somewhere to put the crab meat so that they can buy in bulk. And they have fulfillment contracts. They'll be able to increase those fulfillment contracts as well as increase sales, increase production. They have to have somewhere to put it. And they're just run out of space, freezer space for that.
This is grant or loan?
It's a conditional loan subject to them hiring those 2 employees. They also said that they plan to hire a part-timer. I didn't put that in here because the goal of this program is to promote full-time employment.
And how much time do they have to?
3 years.
3 years to make it.
And then they have to maintain that for 5. So if you think of the return investment for $34,000, at minimum, you're getting 2 people. And even if they were paid $15,000 a year each, over that many years, it's more than what we've loaned them, and that money goes back out in the community. They're paying taxes, their revenues are going to increase, and there's going to be taxes collected related to that, sales tax collection, I mean, compounded.
Love you, Heather.
When you put it that way.
I completely love what you do, but I do not like this deal. But I totally approve of everything you're up to.
Call the vote.
All right, we got motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And an abstention.
An abstention. Okay. 3 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstained. Commissioner
Crabney, too.
You get to grab me
from that?
abstains, Commissioner
Thank
Stevie
you.
Wilson is opposed.
All right. Okay, moving on. We have a series of budget amendments here. The first one is for the Board of Education. Item 10 on page 24 is a request for approval of transfers between major state categories, administration, instructional salaries, and wages to administration, $65,000 for contract payout for public schools. Can I get a motion on that, please?
I move to approve the Board of Education request to transfer $65,000 instructional salaries and wages to administration to account for a contract payout.
I'll second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Silence is consent.
All right. 5-0, motion passes.
Sort of.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Item 11 on page 28 through 34 is a property lien for a nuisance violation, unkept grass, high grass. Can I get a motion on that, please?
I move to approve the resolution, no, wait, yeah.
115.
Yeah. Resolution 2115 to place a lien on this property listed County Zoning Administrator's Memorandum dated September 14th, 2021 for nuisance violations.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item 12 on page 35 is Budget Amendment CC8, Community Partnerships. This is an amendment to increase budget authority for expenditures within the Character Counts program. Can I get a motion on that,
Motion to
please?
approve CC8.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item 13 on page 36 is Budget Amendment CC11 for Public Landings, and this is for Public Landings Division to use prior year fund balance to do some improvements at Wells Cove and Roman Coke Pier.
I move to approve Budget Amendment CC11 to provide $39,000 for improvements to Wells Cove Landing and Roman Coke Pier.
I'll second it. And James, what
James
kind
is
of improvements are we doing?
A locking gate.
Also note that this is an enterprise account as well, so this is not general fund, prior year fund balance we're talking about here too, so just FYI.
Thank you.
To answer your question, we are primarily, this budget amendment relates to Wells Cove improvements. We've been asked to give it a facelift, and kudos to Nancy to coordinating a lot of landscaping and hardscaping. And this includes replacing the bollard lights, which are hard to get parts and corroded in that marine environment. And we needed a little more for the Roman Coke Pier project we're on. We had one additional item we had in the last budget amendment you approved 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
project.
All right, thank you all. All right, item number 14 on page 39 is Budget Amendment CC 46 for Animal Services. And this is to allocate a donation of $91,790, which was received, and funds have been expended towards that in FY21. And then the reserve is left for this next item after CC 46. So this is to allocate that $17,905 for equipment that was purchased in FY21. I believe that was the washer and dryer that we purchased.
Move to approve CC 46.
Second.
So is CC 46 a FY20 budget amendment?
It was the donation came in at the end of FY20.
Okay.
And
I'm
then
just
the
looking
money,
at the number,
yeah,
how high a number is compared to where we're at. Okay.
right,
All right.
exactly.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And Budget Amendment CC9, also Animal Services, and this takes the remainder of those donated funds, $59,885, and provides it across budget authority for medical expenses, animal supplies, and training, and other expense accounts in the FY22 Animal Services budget.
Move to approve CC 9.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, 5-0, motion carries.
Commissioners, that is all of our action items for this evening. We can move into legislation. So that's tab number 7.
Accessory structures.
Yes, first we have County Ordinance 2106, accessory structures in side yards of properties abutting 2 streets, and that is available for a vote tonight.
Corner lots, what that is?
I move to adopt County Ordinance 2106.
Second?
Got a motion from Jack, a second from Phil. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, that motion carries.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And secondly, we have our desk item that was County Ordinance 21-08 for the adoption or the rollback of the National Electrical Code from 2020 to 2017.
I'll introduce County Ordinance 2108 as emergency.
Okay, we will post a hearing for that in 2 weeks, and as emergency legislation, it would take effect immediately if a favorable vote is provided next meeting on the 28th.
Does anybody want to tell the public what it's about, or you're going to wait?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, it's obviously with COVID, there was some disruptions in the electrical supply line chains in terms of breakers and things that were required under the 2020 code. We've been reached out to by many of our electrical contractors here in the county asking for some relief from it. We could have done individual parts and pieces of the code to try and give the relief, but it just seemed, in talking to MDIA and some of our electrical board here, it just seemed to make more sense just to roll it back and wait till the supply shortages are there, and then if we see fit, we can readopt the 2020 or wait till the 2023 code cycle. They're saying some of these shortages are going to last well into 22, so I think we're going to wind up on the 17. And we're still in compliance with the state as long as we're on we can't be below the state, and the state's on the 2017, so we're good to go.
Okay.
That's all the legislation we had for this evening. We can move into press and public comments. If we had anybody? Oh.
Linda?
Good evening, Commissioners. Linda Friday with the Queen Anne's County Chamber. First, I want to thank you for your support for QAC Goes Purple. Last Wednesday, thank you for attending. I think it was an awesome event. We had approximately 300 people that attended, so we were very, very pleased. You never know when you move an event from one area to another what the outcome's going to be. Also, hearing Judge Knight's presentation tonight was just very exciting, and just to know that we're working together as a partner is just really awesome. And anything I'm sure the Drug Free Coalition can do to help, and it probably would be a good idea for her to come to the Drug Free Coalition to do a presentation on what her vision is and how we can help support that program. Also, I just want to let you know that we are doing our economic overview next Thursday, and our director, Heather Tonelli, will be doing the presentation. Also, she will be doing the rollout of the rebranding of the county. So if you can come, we would love to have you as she does the presentation. Next Tuesday, we're doing Success in 60, where we will be at Tech Ops, and I'm sure most of you know what Tech Ops is. So we're excited to go out to that location as a business community to support them and all that they're doing in the community and in our state with the programs that they have been able to do during COVID. I'm sure that they were probably overwhelmed with the build out of the vehicles that they were able to provide. So I would encourage you to follow us and see some of the things that we're doing. We're very excited to be able to get back into doing some normal events, and look forward to seeing you at anything that we do. So anyway, but thank you again for all that you did for Going Purple, because Mr. Commissioner Jim Moran and Todd Mon, they were able to help us decorate the town. So thank you for your support in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up.
This is your time.
Yes.
Member, state your name.
If I go over 3 minutes, I'm allowed, because apparently we do that now.
Remember to state your name and where you're from.
Keith Griffiths from Sothersville, Maryland. I attended a planning meeting last week, and I don't know that I've And I've been into a lot of meetings in Sudlersville, and I don't think I've ever been involved in a larger fiasco than that. You guys are pretty concise with your decisions, yay and nay, when you vote on things. I didn't know what they were voting for, which way they voted. I don't even know if they knew. They voted in favor of a plan that made a lot of residents furious. Those residents left, took a 5-minute break, come back 5 minutes later, said there was some confusion in the vote, don't change your votes, and then completely voted different. Go to the meeting, 1 hour and 31 minutes in, the vote takes place, lasts until about 1 hour and 40 minutes. I don't know what kind of repercussions there'll be for that, but I don't think that it should be operated that way. The whole rest of the meeting, I didn't know which way they voted. Then they allowed some public comment, which they chose to allow a person to move forward after the 3 minutes that was pretty disrespectful to someone that had an idea. Basically called his idea idiotic in the process he took to do it, which is the process that is required for the county. I was really bothered by that because I think this person, you know, should carry themselves a little better. I don't think you should allow people to go beyond 3 minutes when they're in the middle of berating someone for their idea and the way they're doing it because they don't think that it's proper because it doesn't fit their agenda and what they like. I think that, you know, someone needs to speak to the Planning Commission because, you know, not only did they say these things, but they kind of singled out certain people on that commission and chimed in with their relationships and how long they had been involved with each other in certain things, which is a little bit of a conflict of interest in my opinion. They made a decision the prior month without a full panel on some things in Sudlersville on outside of town limits that they had no idea about. They were clueless. They said there's no access to sewer or water. Well, less than 2 miles away, the town of Sudlersville has sewer and water. So that's not accurate and true. I hear all the talk of let's make things happen and let's make things grow in northern Queen Anne's County in certain areas, but then shoot down every idea. Well, the most beneficial place for these businesses is probably on the 301 corridor, which sees the majority of the traffic now. And they say, oh, we don't want to disturb the farmland on the 301. They don't want to disturb it anywhere else either. At some point in time, we've got to get behind people's ideas. I think Mr. Waterman was 100% correct. You know, we say all these different things, but then we don't back them up. We don't follow through, and you're not going to bring anything back from the dead. And that's where we're headed in the northern end of the county. And I think that some attention needs to be paid there. I think some lessons need to be given to the Planning Commission so they're better prepared and informed and make decisions the way you guys make it so it's known what it is. I think their first step is probably raise their hand so everyone sees and knows they're for it or against it. But vote shouldn't switch from yes to no after a 5-minute break where everyone leaves the room.
All right.
You guys are going to have your hands full with that, and just moving forward, I think it'd be nice if you guys worked with them to help bring them along to get as good as they can potentially be.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we'll close press and public comment.
Okay, we have a roundtable.
Stevie Wilson.
I'm going to defer this evening.
Mr. Moran?
I'm just going to echo with our esteemed colleague in the audience. The QAC Goes Purple was outstanding. It was, you know, well attended. Drive up the street here, just drive through the courtyard area and take a look at it. And it was nice. And now to hear Judge Knight come in that they're going to start a drug court is something that's long overdue in Queen Anne's County, and hopefully it'll help a good bit of people. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Jack Wilson.
So I got a bit of a brain teaser. So as I was driving across the bridge,
That's a setup.
I noticed a sign that I guess I really never took notice of. It says, "Do not tailgate and maintain speed," which got me to thinking as I was going up the bridge. And maybe Commissioner Wilson can enlighten me on this. When we're doing our calculations on capacity, do we take into account, obviously the speed limit on the bridge is 50, leading up to the bridge is 55? And do we take into account the car lengths that should be left between two cars, which when I was doing Congress quote was 2 car lengths, into the number of cars that can actually be on the bridge at any given time? That's my brain teaser.
Well, it's not, I understand the question, but my response would be that little machine that's up there, it's counting those cars.
No, I get it, but we still don't know if we're getting 1,500 per hour per lane. That's what I'm getting at is when they say we can get 1,500 per hour per lane, can we truly get that based on
they don't say
the
that
sheer?
anymore. So they
Well,
don't-
okay,
yeah,
so it's kind of answered my question.
Yeah,
I'm just,
no.
you know.
They've dialed that back down, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,250, if that, so.
So how much of that is deficit per lane coming up then?
All 3 lanes is 750 vehicles an hour.
With them all, so 250 per lane, basically?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's it.
Commissioner Dumino?
Bicycle Phil?
Yeah, Bicycle Phil, right. So I actually had the opportunity to attend a ribbon cutting today for a new bicycle trail that was created by the efforts of several organizations that worked collaboratively together to make this reach fruition. And I know that one of the gentlemen had actually reached out to me shortly after this set of commissioners was elected back in 2018. So this is how long this project has taken place. But it's located down at Terrapin Park, and our high school cycling team, which, by the way, was created just about that same time, will be able to host cycling meets and practices there. And my understanding is that citizens can also, if they have a desire to take their off-road bicycles through this trail, there are several different challenging parts of the trail. But it was interesting and comforting to see that something that was worked on and committed by a small handful of folks could take as long as it did to get there, but understanding the environmental hoops that have to be jumped through, the liability issues involved. But in the end, today was a great day, and I actually had an opportunity to ride my bike on the trail, and I would encourage my fellow commissioners to try it at least once.
And on that trail, they can hit the library because it goes right to the library, right?
That's right. And get their library cards.
There you go.
See how we bring it all the way around?
Yes, yeah, weave that. So anyway, and then just a real quick comment on how our county is responding to Queen Anne's County going purple. Seeing the big water towers lit up purple, to drive through neighborhoods and seeing the purple lights out in front of people's houses. It's comforting to know that this movement that was started, I guess, in Talbot County, and we adopted it next, has just really, there's folks on my street that have purple lights, and I've never met these folks, but they're jumping on the bandwagon, and I think it's comforting for people. I have to believe that it's comforting for people who are battling drug addiction to see all this purple and know that a community is behind them and willing to help in any way that we can. That's got to make folks that are, battling this sickness feel a little bit better to see all this purple. That's all I have.
And their family members.
And their family members, yep.
All right. Like enough. We get go into closed session, right?
Nothing for you?
Yes, we have.
No, I'm good. It's late, so I figure we got to get closed session.
Motion to go into closed.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Go into close.
Folks, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Do we have?
At 5.
I know we do.
There was just
We're on.
All right, we're
Yeah,
back.
go for it.
Call the meeting back to order.
Thank you, Commissioners. We just held a closed session under Section 3-305B1 of the General Provisions Article to discuss personnel, and under Sections 3-305B3 of the General Provisions Article to discuss land acquisition. And I will say on July 13th, the Commissioners authorized a phased salary study focused on the critical workforce needs and corresponding recommendations to keep pace with our local and regional salary wage markets. And I do believe we reached consensus on phases 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
Make such a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Appreciate it
I'll
very
make a
much.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?